All right, we got Pennsylvania there, Philadelphia. But yeah, type in where you're watching from, and then also answer the question, what's important to you about owning a home? And kind of the thought process there is, you could have bought a house 2 years ago, or you could buy a house 2 years from now, like into the future. But something's making you think about, hey, maybe I should buy a house. I should look into it. So what's doing that? What's important to you about owning a home? So if you can type that in, that'd be cool, just so we can get some interaction going. How is this program different from other normal home loan process? Well, if you're a teacher or a nurse, there's some added benefits, but the process is going to be the same. We're going to talk about a lot of things like, how to negotiate different things on a contract, what to look for. Should I use a realtor? What about I got to pay them commissions? So all the stuff that's going on in the marketplace right now, we're going to have a conversation about it. And but as far as how to buy a home, this is going to be, the whole overview of how to buy a home. And then we'll talk specifically about some different programs that could benefit you, depending on your situation. Like if you were looking at, maybe a lower down payment, or maybe a higher down payment to pay the loan off quickly, have a lower monthly payment. Some people look down payment assistance where you have no down payment. So all those different opportunities are available to you. And then a big thing is seller concessions. We'll talk about that. And that's where someone pays you money to buy a house. So we'll get into all those things. But great question. But this is, I don't know, that's different than buying a home, but we're just going to give you all the information about buying a home. And but usually people walk away with a lot of added value information, sometimes more questions. So we want to try and answer them all for you. And we're going to power through this thing, and we'll probably take up the whole hour. And then I'll dismiss you guys and say thank you, but we'll definitely stick around and answer any questions you guys have to make sure we get them all answered, by the end. So we got a reason to buy a home, security, legacy. Those are cool. Affordability, that's awesome. Yeah, stop the payment from going up. So we'll talk about all those things. And we're about 4 after, so I'm going to get going. And then Elizabeth will be letting people in as they come along. And then we've got a couple loan officers on here that are going to answer the questions as we're going through. So you'll see them in the background there. So let me jump in here. So buying a home in today's market, and what are the things you need to be aware of? So my name's Albie. I'm with TruView Lending. I've been doing this for a little over 30 years. And I jumped in, started out as a loan officer back in the early 90s, and I was refinancing people, and we were taking them from double digits. They were 13, 14% interest rates, and we were dropping them all the way down to a single digit. We got them into the high nines, 9 3/4, 9 7/8. They were super excited to get into a single digit interest rate. And so that's where I kind of started my career. Learned a lot about, the home buying process, first time home buyers. And I ended up buying my first home at 24, and then bought some investment properties. I did a little mini subdivision, learned how to build homes, started doing investment properties, and then everything was going great. And then in 2003, I got my real estate license, helped a lot of investors buy homes, formed a lot of partnerships, ended up having 22 rental properties. And then in 2007, lost everything, cleaned the slate. I didn't think prices would ever go down, but they did. And me and a bunch of investors, I got to learn a lot about foreclosures and short sales and bankruptcy and all the stuff you don't want to do. And so I learned a lot of what not to do and how to rebuild when you're kind of pummeled, a total restart. And then jump back into being a full-time loan officer again in 2012. Started building out the Teacher Next Door program, working with teachers and nurses all across the U.S. Had to rent a little bit, while I was kind of going through my education process of what not to do. And then bought a home, and now, invest properties again. So I've run the whole gamut of real estate, and lots of tough lessons and lots of fun adventures, but it's been an awesome ride. So that's a little bit about my background. And so Teacher Next Door, the next door program. So it started out teacher next door, then moved to nurse next door, soldier next door, public servant. That's pretty much any city government employee. So the premise of the teacher next door program, it's pretty much people that are serving their community. And so the guy who put the thing together, Steve Parks, out of Florida, he actually, his wife was a school teacher, and he started this program where he would help teachers be able to buy homes. And so that's where the Teacher Next Door program started out, and then it kind of evolved after that in these different areas. But it's really cool, the program. Everybody that's helping you out buy a home, whether it's your lender, your realtor, appraiser, home inspector, everyone's giving back to you to say thank you for what you do. Thank you for taking care of our kiddos and making the sacrifices you do for the community. When you're buying a home, now it's time for us to give back to you. And so that's kind of the premise of the program. And so thank you again for what you guys do every day. You guys are helping out your whole community. So these are the 47 states, actually 46 states and Washington, D.C., that we lend in. The program Teacher Next Door is a separate program than TruView Lending. I work with TruView Lending, and the program's in all 50 states, but these are the states that we service. Now, if you're not in one of these states, you'll still get a lot out of this webinar that we're doing. So it'll help you kind of understand the whole buying process, even if we're not the ones helping you with the financing. So today's agenda, we're going to talk about understanding the home buying process, hopefully make it exciting. We want to simplify it. There's a lot going on there. And then we're going to talk about the challenges you guys are going to face in today's market. We're going to talk about, people say, well, should I buy now? Should I wait for the rates to come down? Should I wait for anything? And so we're going to talk about, what's the answer to those questions. We're going to talk about contract negotiations, all the things you're going to negotiate in any contract. We're going to talk about the journey of home ownership, and then don't listen to the media. A lot of stuff they say, if you pay attention to it, it could hurt you. And then the next steps, connecting with the loan officer and moving forward. So, we asked a question in the beginning, and we got a couple answers to what's important to you about owning a home. And so, normally if I'm in a group where we're talking a bunch, then, we're kind of having that interaction. But these are the most common answers that we get. And so I want to kind of go through those with you, and some of them will resonate with what you're looking for. So, some people talk to me about, having a bigger yard, maybe a place to have a place that, a playground for their kiddos, a swing set, or, they do barbecues, or they want to store their RV, or, just room to be able to have a garden and things like that. So a big yard, sometimes it's, well, I've got a dog that, it's a little hard to find a rental. They're a little weird about my dog. And so if I just have my own place with a big backyard, that's what I want. And sometimes people, when they have a big backyard, they're like, do you have any idea about the maintenance of this backyard? And so, then maybe they want to downsize and get a smaller yard because, it takes up your Saturday cutting the grass and, keeping the whole thing all dialed in. So ebbs and flows on, learning what's best for you. But safe neighborhood, we saw that, in security, one of the answers. But that's a big one. And whether it's you solo or maybe with a spouse or with kiddos, but that safety, it's huge. If you're in an apartment complex, sometimes it's, not as nice if it was your own single family home that's kind of, set apart. So that's a big one. Close to family, a lot of times people, they say, we want to buy a house close to where our folks live or our relatives live. And they want, let's do life together. Maybe you got kiddos and, kind of built-in babysitters and things like that. But, it's kind of cool to be able to do life with your family and kind of own something near them. So that's an answer that we see a lot. No rent increases. This is a big one. Affordability, we saw. When you're renting, we don't know what the payment's going to be next year. Is it going to go up $50? Is it going to go up $0? Is it going to go up $200? And so it's a little tough to budget and plan in the future. If you're like, well, I'm going to save up for that vacation next year. We'll set aside, $200 a month at the end of the month and start saving up for that. But then all of a sudden your rent increases. And you're like, now we got to save even more. So that's the tricky thing with renting, is you're just not aware, and there's no way to really tell what the future is going to hold for finances and budgeting and dialing all that in. But when you own a home, it's fixed for 30 years. Like, what that payment's going to be for the next 30 years. So, another one, grow equity, financial vehicle. This is a big one. This is the game changer. When you own a home, you get that asset, and as it grows up in value, that's your money. Like, you have access to that money. And it's a night and day change from someone who ends up renting their whole life versus someone who owns a home. And we'll show you a little bit more about that as we go through these slides. Plant a tree that'll be yours. This was actually mine, but the thought process, it kind of incorporates a lot of what people think. But when I had my reset and we went back to renting, because I went through foreclosure stuff like that, I couldn't buy. But I would sit out back with my wife, we'd have a cup of coffee, and we'd talk about our future. We'd say, it'd be so cool if we had some trees here, and maybe if we did a gazebo there. And then I'm thinking, like, it's not my house though. It's my landlord would love it. It's going to increase the value of the property, but I don't want to do that and have them get the benefit, me not get the benefit. So where you plant a tree, a little tree, $20, it grows up, and now it's this massive tree in a couple of years, and it adds a lot of value to the property. So the house I own now, we've got the most treed lot in the neighborhood, and in Arizona, that's something you kind of need is shade, but but just being able to do your own thing with the house and not have to ask permission, that's kind of cool when you own your own place. But a place to call home, settle, build a family, make memories. If you look at someone's Facebook, or you look at like a photo album, a lot of times it revolves around that house, and you can see the house in the background. Like, this couple here, let's say this was taken, 15, 20 years ago, and they're looking at this picture like, oh my gosh, remember we tried to plant those tomato plants and they died, and look at our house was, is that color. Remember, now we got to trim different, and look at these little plants here, they're all grown up, and oh, look at that house across the street, it's painted gray now. You remember that? It was yellow, and so it's kind of cool to just, see the changes. But a lot of times you'll have, family events, and you'll have birthdays and anniversaries and holidays together. And it's usually the house is in the background, and it really becomes a big part of us. So it's kind of cool to own that house, that's part of your memories. And then, being able to personalize your home without permission. I don't know if any of you guys are renting and, you want to maybe paint a room, and you got to ask the landlord, and like, no, you can't do that. And like, so it's a little tough to personalize it if it's not really your own. But when it's your own, you're not asking permission anymore. And, where, if you're renting, like, well, we can't move until the lease is up. When you own, you can leave when you want to. You can sell that thing, turn it into a rental. So you've got a lot more options when you own a home versus, renting a home. And the biggest one is, paying yourself versus your landlord. So, we tell people it's kind of like a savings account is your house. And every month, when you're making that payment as you're renting, you're putting money into a savings account. And when you're owning, same thing, you're putting money into a savings account. And somebody has access to that money in the future. And if you're renting, your landlord has access. And they're like, thank you. I love that you're taking care of my house. I love that you're making the payment for me. And every month you make that payment, it goes into my savings account that I have access to. Thank you. But if you own the home, then every month when you're making that house payment, that's your money in the future. And you have access to that, not your landlord. So that's the big game changer. And we'll show you a little bit more about that. Like, why is it such a big game changer? How does it create so much wealth? Why is it the number one investment for most people in their lives? And I'll show you that here. So this is a chart a realtor gave me, and it was kind of interesting to see. So this is, 50 to 75,000 income level, 75 to 125, 125 to almost 200,000. But at the different income levels, you can see what people's net worth was if they owned a home versus renting a home. And so pretty significant difference on, the value, what they have, what their net worth is when they own a home. And it's not just because that property value goes up and you pay it off. Like, that's what most people think. But when you own a home, a lot of times, you have that land with it, and you can do different things with that land. Like, if you're a camper, maybe you rent an RV, but if you've got land to park that thing and you don't have to pay, a rental fee or a monthly fee to store that, now maybe like, well, maybe we should buy our own RV. And as you pay that thing off, that becomes an asset. Or maybe, you like to go to the lake and you got a boat, or, whatever, a side-by-side or motorcycles or whatever it is, whatever hobby you have. A lot of times when you own that land, then you can own other things and have these other assets. And so that creates the net worth. Another thing is, a lot of people have